A reading from Dom Prosper Guéranger's The Liturgical Year. September 1st, St. Giles, Abbot. A simple and upright man, and fearing God and avoiding evil. Such is the description of the just man in the lessons of the night office for the time, and it is the portrait of the holy monk whom the Church offers us today for our admiration, our imitation, and our devotion. Fleeing from men in order to find God, he quitted his native land, where his rank and still more his virtues prevented him from being unknown. He wandered from the coasts of Greece to the borders of the Rhone, and stopped at length in the forests of Septimania, where he seemed to have found his desired solitude. There for 3 years he dwelt in a cave hidden among the brambles, spending his time in giving thanks to God and praying for the salvation of the people. He lived on herbs and water until our Lord sent him a hind to nourish him with her milk. But his little friend was soon to betray him. One day, hard pressed by the hounds, she fled in terror to the saint, followed by the royal huntsman. Safe with her protector, her fears were calmed. But an arrow, aimed at her, pierced St. Giles's hand, which was never afterwards healed, for he refused to have it dressed, in order that he might bear the pain of it for the rest of his life. But a greater trial awaited him. His retreat having been thus discovered, a monastery soon rose upon the spot, and he was forced to become its abbot. Moreover, he worked so many miracles that crowds came to see him. Farewell to the silence and oblivion of his beloved forest. After the death of the servant of God, the place became more and more frequented. From north and east and south, pilgrims poured in to offer up their prayers and fulfill their vows at the tomb of one who soon became known as one of the most helpful saints in heaven. Among the crowds came pontiffs and kings, but the most numerous classes of visitors to the holy relics were soldiers and little children, the former equipped for the Crusades, the latter borne in their mother's arms, all confiding in the humble, gentle monk who, at the risk of his life, calmed the terror of the poor little hind, all imploring his assistance against the fear which even the bravest may feel in the hour of battle, or the fright that disturbs the little one in his cradle. St. Giles is ranked as one of the 3 great pilgrimages of the West, the other 2 being Rome and Compostela. Over the relics of the saint was raised a colossal church, which has been described as the most perfect type of the Byzantine style when at the height of its splendor. Around it a town of 30,000 households has sprung up, where formerly there was but a desert. The most illustrious of the powerful counts of Toulouse gave the preference over his other titles to the one he held from this noble city. He would be known to posterity as Raymond of St. Giles. 100 years later, Raymond VI did penance at the threshold of the celebrated basilica for his connivance with heresy. Our saint, who had just given hospitality to Peter of Castelnau for his last resting place, opened his gates for the reconciliation of the martyr's presumed murderer. We should never end were we to enumerate the churches, parishes, abbeys, and altars consecrated to St. Giles in all parts of Christendom, which are so many sources of grace and new centers for pilgrimages. Spain, Italy, Belgium, Germany, Hungary, Bavaria, Poland, rival France in this respect. England is second to no country in the world. She has 146 sanctuaries dedicated to the pious monk, and even the established church continues to honor him. Let us hasten to give the short legend that remains to the holy abbot since the 16th century, when his feast ceased to be celebrated with 9 lessons. Most of his precious relics are preserved in the rich treasury of the church of Saint-Sernin at Toulouse. Saint Gilles du Gard, which had been obliged to give them up in order to save them from the sacrilegious hands of the armed heretics, had in 1865 the consolation of discovering his original tomb. Giles was an Athenian of royal race, who from his childhood applied himself so earnestly to the study of divine things and to works of charity that he seemed to care for nothing else. On his parents' death, he distributed his whole fortune among the poor, even stripping himself of his own garment in order to clothe a poor sick man, who was cured as soon as he put it on. Many other miracles soon made his name so famous that for fear of renown he fled to St. Caesarius at Arles. After 2 years, Giles departed thence and retired into a desert, where he lived a life of wonderful holiness, his only food being the roots of herbs and the milk of a hind who came to him at fixed times. One day the hind, being pursued by the royal huntsman, took refuge in his cave. Upon this discovery of the holy man, the King of France begged Giles to allow a monastery to be built on the site of the cave. At the king's desire he was obliged, against his will, to undertake the government of this monastery, and after having for several years discharged that office with much piety and prudence, he passed away to heaven. Go to my servant, and offer for yourselves a holocaust, and my servant shall pray for you. His face I will accept, that folly be not imputed to you. This word is unceasingly fulfilled, O blessed Giles, in the innumerable sanctuaries where thou art honored. Make use of thy prerogatives for our benefit. Hear our prayers, for the glory of him who has crowned thy humility. In return for the beautiful peace thou didst ever preserve in thy soul, thou now hast power over the countless troubles which disturb our miserable existence, from the cradle even to the tomb. Thou aidest mothers to drive away from their babes the nightly phantoms raised by the enemy of the innocents. Thou preservest the little ones from the terrible maladies to which childhood is liable. Thou watchest over the youth to secure his good morals, and givest him the fear of God, which will make him a courageous and upright man. Thou makest him brave and calm in the midst of dangers, whether in thunderstorms or on the field of battle. Above all, thou preservest thy client from the most cowardly of all fears, that of human respect, and from the saddest kind of shame, that which would withhold him from acknowledging his sins in the sacred tribunal of penance. The cares and disappointments of middle life do not disturb the peace of him who trusts in thee. Old age has no anxious future for him. He falls into his last sleep in the bosom of God, as in infancy he fell asleep in his mother's arms. Deign to accept us among thy devout clients, and disappoint us not in our expectations. We must not omit to mention briefly that with the Greeks this day is the first of the calendar. They celebrate it as a feast called of the Indiction, or of the New Year. End of reading for St. Giles.